and say good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our 2022 bilingual reading that we're honored to co-sponsor with the Almutnabe Street Starts Here Coalition. I'm Tom Hogan. I'm the coordinator of the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and thank you all for being here. We know that you have a lot of choices, and so appreciate that you spending your time with us and commemorating the bombing that we're here to commemorate. We're commemorating the bombing that occurred on March 5th, 2007 in Almutnabe Street, which is the bookseller street in Baghdad. And this was, in addition to bombing the street, also an attack on culture. And so we're commemorating that. After the original event, the Almutnabe Street Starts Here Coalition was founded by Bo Salil, who is a bookstore owner in San Francisco. And it's just continued to develop. And I love this event. We got involved in it in 2014, 2015. One of our committee members, Gail Barker, went with one of the regulars at our open mics, Bill Denham, to an Almutnabe Street Starts Here Coalition reading at Portland State. And they both came back and just really waxed eloquent about it. So they talked about it, read some of the poems. And I thought we want to be involved with that. So we have been co-sponsoring events, bilingual readings since then. And I would, before we talk about how we're going to proceed today, I'd like to introduce my co-host today from the Almutnabe Street Starts Here Coalition, Dr. Budi, Bahar Budi. Great to see you.
Thank you, Tom. I mean, you made a great introduction. I cannot even say more about it, except that we are still grateful to you and to the Milwaukie reading group. Like you are persistent. We Iraqis are a little bit, seem to be spacing out. If you guys like, I can tell you about what's happening right now in Iraq.
Good idea.
Yeah, would you?
I think especially these days, we are busy with another war in Europe this time. Anyways, it's just to keep you updated on Iraq. It's an interesting moment that we are having. There was a national elections toward the end of the last year. And then the pro-Iranian bloc lost most of their seats, lost the majority in the parliament. The bloc that won is, I don't know if you guys have heard of Muqtada al-Sadr. Anyway, he's the leader of a very large majority of the Iraqi Shia. They are anti-Iranian and anti-American. Okay. The good news is that there is a new opening now to a real democracy in Iraq, but the pro-Iranian bloc has like kind of stopped the political process to proceed. So that's what we have been busy with in the last 3-4 months. The Prime Minister is Al-Kadhimi, Mohsen Al-Kadhimi. He's a hidden, let's say, as a moderate, hidden pro-American, and he's collaborating with Al-Sadr. So we are waiting for something good to happen, and if it doesn't happen, it means we are going into another bout of violence, unfortunately. I'm laughing at it because we just got fed up. So we'll keep you updated when good things happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm muted, which reminds me to make a reminder to everyone to, if you would mute yourself when you're not talking. So we're going to go to the readers shortly. And before we do that, there are some thanks that I forgot to make and I want to make. And one is to the city of Milwaukie, who has supported us in these endeavors really from the beginning, which is back in 2007, 2008. in the Learning Library of Milwaukee, which is, we have been a committee of the Learning Library. And thirdly, the Milwaukee Poetry Series Committee. So we have a group of people that have been working on this throughout the time we've been doing it. And you know, you need to have that to happen. Have a group of people working on it. So thank you to all of them. Please, as I say, mute yourself if you're not talking. And when the readers start to read, at least on my screen, I'm going to switch to speaker view. And we're going to try to record the speakers in speaker view and the questions and answers and so forth in gallery view, which we are in now. So our first reader, who I'm going to introduce, is Judith Arcana. And I got this from Judith's website, and I love your website.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're surprising me. I'm thinking, oh, what did he do?
But one of the things Judith has on her website is pictures of her from different times in her life. So you can really see the line. It's just, it's lovely. I thought it was great.
Thank you. I like the little girl pictures. They're just so, you know, now that I'm an old person, it is so funny and charming to look at the little girl and think, is that actually me? How can that be? That's one of the existential questions. Is that really the same person? You know? I know. Yeah.
Looking back at
Amazing.
pictures of us when we were younger.
Yeah.
Thinking, my gosh. So Judith was born and raised in the Great Lakes region and living now in the Pacific Northwest. She's a writer of poems, stories, essays, and books. Praised by writers and readers, reviewers, and community leaders, Judith's work appears in collections and journals online and on paper. Links to and information about her published work are on, and then I want to refer you to her website. There are a lot of links there to one thing and another. So let's welcome our first reader today, Judith Arcana. Judith.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, folks. Okay, so this is the poem that is my participation in this day's experience. It's called A Different Thing. And this poem appears in a book that I'm very happy about called Announcements from the Planetarium. And it's particularly notable for us because it's from a small press in Oregon, the Flowstone, which is the poetry branch of Left Fork Press, way down in the south, downstate, as we used to say in the Great Lakes, but here just down in the southwest corner of Oregon. Okay, so here we go. A different thing. I'm not saying I'm done collecting knowledge. I won't stop picking up shiny bits of information. I'm saying wisdom is a different thing. It's not about collection, accumulation. Maybe it's like sorting, arranging, mixing, and then steeping, like making tea, letting it steep, letting it sit a while, sometimes tasting it, learning what it is after you wait through the time it's been steeping. Fact is, everybody's wise sometimes, babies even, high school sophomores, 37-year-old bank managers. But the main thing, the main way of the mind, the way that comes later, wisdom is or means something else, something babies, high school sophomores, and 37-year-old bank managers don't do or have or use. You can be this old and not be wise, but you can't be wise if you're not this old, not this much, this long, this often. Not as a habit. The gift comes late, perhaps as compensation. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
And now in Arabic.
Well, I hope you like the Arabic. شيء مختلف. أنا لا أقول إنني انتهيت من جمع المعرفة. لن أتوقف عن التقاط أجزاء لامعة من المعلومات. أنا أقول الحكمة شيء مختلف، ليس ذلك حول جمع أو تراكم. ربما إنها مثل فرز ترتيب خلط ثم الانحدار، مثل صنع الشاي، تركها شديدة الانحدار والسماح بذلك لفترة، تتذوقها في بعض الأحيان، تعلم ما هو عليه بعد الانتظار خلال الوقت الذي كان يفترض حدوثه. حقيقة إن الجميع حكيم في بعض الأحيان، أطفال حتى، طالبة المدرسة الثانوية، 37 مديري البنك العام. ولكن كما الشيء الرئيسي، الطريقة الرئيسية للعقل، الطريقة التي تأتي في وقت لاحق، الحكمة أو الوسيلة، شيء آخر، شيء أطفال، السنة الثانوية، السنة الثانية، 37 مدير البنك القديم، لا يمكن القيام به لديك أو استخدامه. يمكنك أن تكون هذا أو لا يكون حكيم، لكن لا يمكنك أن تكون حكيما إذا لم تكن هذا قديما. لن يأخذ هذا كثيرا من الوقت مع أنه طويل في كثير من الأحيان، ولكن ليس كالعادة. تأتي الهدية متأخرة، ربما كتعويض. في جوديث أركانا. شكرا. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so, even though I don't speak Arabic, it's very lovely to hear. I think I said that, and yet, the whole concept of translation, it's very exciting.
And it is a very deep, to be honest, I had some time. It is a deep poem, Judith, I have to say.
Yes.
Poetic wisdom and philosophy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you both. Do you want to say anything more, Judith, about coming to write that poem?
Well, obviously, one of the primary sources of the poem was my own aging. And I think about that. I think about it every day. I think, well, what's going to happen? How long do I have? How can I think about the future now that I know, as a fact, this is the way it is, that the future for me is now some tiny number of years. And I think, well, what does that mean in terms of the way I'm supposed to behave, the way I'm supposed to think about being alive? And it's a puzzle, I'll tell you. I'm not saying I have answers to these questions. I have these questions. And it's not, to me anyway, it's not a negative thing. It's not a bad attitude. It's what, well, as the poem says in different words, it's what comes with the years. Mm-hmm. We think about these things because this is what the years have brought us to. So it's not even a preoccupation, it's an occupation, It's part of the way I am as a living person, to think about this fact. Whoa, what does this mean? Well, I don't have the answer, but the questions are endlessly interesting. So that's enough about that.
Yeah, thank you for addressing this that we all face.
Yeah.
So our next poet is David Feiner, and David lives in Portland's Selwood neighborhood. He is retired after careers in teaching and law. His wife, Marlene Anderson, created and directs the Imani Project, working with villagers in coastal Kenya on HIV/AIDS prevention and many other matters. So, and there is a link for her work. David has published 3 poetry chapbooks: Housekeeping, Weather Patterns, and The Landscape There. Would you join me in welcoming our next featured reader, David Feiner?
Well, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I'm reading a poem that Tom chose out of the samples that I sent him, a sonnet in form except for the absence of a rhyme scheme. Anyway, it's called Local Meteorology. And it's also about thinking, like the previous poem was, about thinking. Sitting on the front porch, looking due west across the ridge toward the hidden ocean. It's easy to see the weather coming into the valley from the Pacific Ocean. Usually rain, which we do need to keep our landscape as green as we like. And as usual, that weather comes to pass. There won't be need of watering for now, and mowing must wait till a drier day. What is left on my chore list is to think. And thinking is sometimes the hardest job of all. Thinking can never be made safe. And even in such very pleasant times, thinking can cause a storm that floods our lives. And now it's my pleasure, if it's okay to go ahead, Tom.
Well, no, we want to hear yours in Arabic first.
Oh, Arabic, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought there weren't going to be.
Now, Bar is going to read the poems in Arabic.
Well,
Okay, great.
let me welcome our friend, my Iraqi friend Hadi. Hadi has joined us. تسمعني يا أبو حسن؟ Muted أنت أبو حسن. ما افتح الميكروفون أبو حسن. Mute أبو حسن تسمعني؟ Yeah. Okay. So I'll go ahead and read it. I was hoping he can do it.
Let's see if we can get him unmuted.
اوكي تسمعني؟
أي.
اقرا؟
تتفضل. Yeah.
اقرا القصيده اول مره بالعربي ولا بالانجليزي؟
بالعربي. القصيدة مال هذا الرجال اللي كان دا يقراها. تقدر؟ لو بعدين.
يا شو اسمها؟ ما انت ما لحقت انا.
اوكي انا راح اقراها. اوكي.
شو اسمها هي؟
مال الارصاد الجويه. مال الارصاد الجويه.
بيس؟
لا الارصاد.
هاي موجوده. اي اقراها؟ اي. جالسا على الشرفة الأمامية أنظر غربا عبر التلال نحو المحيط الخفي. من السهل رؤية الطقس قادما إلى الوادي في المحيط الهادي. عادة المطر الذي يحتاجه للحفاظ على مناظرها الخضراء كما يجب، وكالعادة يأتي هذا الطقس ثم يذهب. لن تكون حاجة للري في الوقت الحالي. يجب أن ينتظر القص حتى يوم جاف. ما تبقى من على قائمة الأعمال الروتينية الخاصة بي هو التفكير في بعض الأحيان، وهو أصعب عمل من كل شيء. التفكير لا يمكن أبدا أن يكون آمنا حتى في مثل هذه الأوقات السارة للغاية. التفكير يمكن أن يسبب عاصفة تغرق حياتنا. انتهى. Finished.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
وعندي الثانية البيس.
And welcome.
Thank you.
من يقرأ؟
I'll ask David the same question. Do you want to say anything more about how you came to write that poem?
Well, I don't remember the specifics, but the front porch referred to as my front porch here at the house. And I can see the ridge to the west of us and sometimes watch the weather coming over the ridge. And it's a very interesting thing to do, just to be part of an insignificant part, perhaps, of what's going on all over.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Do I get to introduce you now?
Yeah, now I'm going to read next and David's going to introduce me.
Okay, and I wanted to, before the introduction itself, just thank Tom for his years and years of work with Milwaukie Library's poetry series, without which we wouldn't be doing this today. virtually or otherwise, preferably in person. Anyway, thank you, Tom. And Tom Hogan's latest book is titled Giving Thanks, New and Selected Poems. It was published by Dancing Moon Press in 2018. He's also the author of 5 chapbooks and The Promise of the Trail, also by Dancing Moon Press back in 2014. He coordinates as I mentioned, he coordinates the poetry series from Milwaukie, and currently it's in its 15th season. And he lives with his wife, Jane, in Milwaukie, Oregon, not surprisingly. Anyway, Tom, you're on.
Well, thank you very much, David, and for that nice introduction. And yeah, that's probably right, that it's not that surprising. We live in Milwaukie. So I thought a lot about what poem I wanted to read, and I finally hit on this one, which is, it's been around a little bit in my work, and it could have been partly a factor of the recent Russian invasion of Ukraine that just led me to this, and how arbitrary it seems. So it's the word that is a bridge. If you live to be 100, this has got an epigraph on it. If you live to be 100, I hope I live to be 100 minus 1 day, so I never have to live a day without you. A only. I would love to calculate how many times a minute around the world people say it. In boulevard cafes, thatched bungalows, Mongolian yurts. Love is flexible as a rubber band, strong as a steel rod. People mean different things when they say it. I would love to go to Mexico City with you, she said, as raindrops pattered on Chevy's Malibu's metallic roof. I look at the condition of the world and know that 500 times a second isn't enough. It needs to be 5,000 times, a million, enough to get the job done. It should be said as many times as possible. Love is a bridge over the gulfs and ravines of misunderstanding. Love is a verb as well as a noun. Love is aimless, as a book by Billy Collins. Love is tonic, salve, bandage, palliative, medicine, antibiotic. Love is a trumpet blast of salvation. Love spreads warmth like a radiator. Love tastes sweet like ambrosia, intoxicating in its fragrance. Love is foolish. Love is all and in all. Love is the bridge we need to walk continuously, the road that takes you to where you want to go. The word that is a bridge. Thank you very much. And now in Arabic.
الكلمة التي هي جسر. إذا كنت تعيش حتى تصل إلى 100 عاماً، أتمنى أن أعيش 100 ناقص يوم واحد، حتى لا يتعين علي أبداً أن أعيش يوماً بدونك. يقول ميلن: أود أن أحسب عدد مرات دقيقة حول العالم يقولها الناس في مقاهي بوليفارد، أكواخ من القش، خيام مغولية. الحب مرن كشريط مطاطي، قوي مثل قضيب فولاذي. يقصد الناس أشياء مختلفة عندما يقولون ذلك. أود أن أذهب إلى مكسيكو سيتي معك، قالت بينما كانت قطرات المطر تدق على السقف المعدني بسيارة الشيفرليه ماليبو. أنا أنظر في حالة الدنيا، ونعلم إن 500 مرة في الثانية ليست كافية. إنها بحاجة إلى 5000 مرة، مليون، حتى تكفي لإنجاز هذه المهمة. ينبغي أن تقال أكبر عدد ممكن من المرات. الحب جسر فوق الخلجان ووديان سوء التفاهم. الحب هو فعل وكذلك هو اسم. الحب هو بلا هدف ككتاب لبيلي كولينز. الحب منشط، مرهم، ضمادة، ملطفة، دواء، مضاد حيوي. الحب هو نفخة بوق الخلاص. الحب ينشر الدفء مثل المبرد. مذاقات الحب حلوة مثل الطعام الشهي، مسكر برائحته. الحب أحمق. الحب هو الكل والكل. الحب هو الجسر الذي نحتاجه للسير بشكل مستمر، الطريق الذي يأخذك إلى حيث تريد أن تذهب. Thank you, Tom Hogan.
Thank you, Bahar. So I'll try to answer the same question that I asked Judith and David. And I started with that poem by thinking about the word love and just noticing that in English, it's a word that can mean a lot of different things, or people use in a lot of different contexts. And so that was the entryway into doing that. So I started to work with it, and this particular poem evolved out of that process. So
I'd like to say something about the word love in Arabic.
yeah,
I'm not sure, maybe in English it has. In Arabic, love, it's hub. They use this word, it starts with ho. It starts from the bottom of the airway, and it ends with the b by the end. So it's like, it's the whole system is being used to, like, it's everything, you know, from the beginning to the end. Hub. Anyway, this is how I say it in Arabic. This is why it's used in Arabic.
Yes.
I hope it makes sense.
What I love about that is you're saying the whole body feels it. It comes
Yeah.
through the body, and so it's really expressed in language in that way. That's so wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So let me introduce our next poet, who is Annie Lightheart. And here's a bio that she sent me. Annie Lightheart began writing poetry after her first visit to an Oregon old growth forest, and now teaches poetry wherever and whenever she can. Poems in her books, Iron String and Pax, have been featured in the Writer's Almanac and in various anthologies, including How to Love the World and Poetry of Presence. Annie's work has been turned into music, used in healing projects in Iceland, England, and New Zealand. And I love this, has traveled further than she has. So would you join me in welcoming our next poet, Annie Lightheart?
Thank you, Tom. I'm so glad to be part of this reading and this movement for peace and love. Lately, I've been talking with my children about the forces of division and hate in the world. These are very hard conversations. And we keep coming back to peace in the end. And we decided that we carry peace with us always, you know, in our tongues, on our tongues and our hands. And yet it feels so powerless, like a word on a page in a book that's about to be burned. But we keep talking about it, and we agreed that although we feel so tiny, we feel that there's the possibility of growth, and that peace can be not just a counterbalance to the hate and division in the world, but as a presence that surrounds it with a greater warmth or a greater sun. And my little boy said that when you look for peace, you see it everywhere, sometimes small, sometimes bigger, like this reading today. And so this poem is called Peace. Peace came with no words. It was a frame around darkness, the gate to a city far in my head. It contained murders and torture, deaths circled by fire. It held also the husk, the green spur, and the strong second leaves. It was a new bird, a broad field like the sea. Peace was the shore. It was deep in the world. You were there. We were many. There were no separate stars in that sky.
Arabic?
Now in Arabic.
Yes. السلام. جاء السلام بدون كلمات. كان إطارا حول الظلام. البوابة إلى مدينة بعيدة. في رأسي إنه يحتوي جرائم القتل والتعذيب والوفيات. المحاطة بدائرة الناس. إنها قشر الحفر الأخضر والأوراق الثانية القوية. كان طائرا جديد، حقل واسع مثل البحر. السلام كان الشاطئ، كان عميقا في العالم. أنت كنت هناك كما كان كثيرون. لم يكن هناك نجوم منفصلة في تلك السماء. Done.
Thank you very much, Annie,
Welcome.
for reading the poem in Arabic. Annie's already talked a little about it, writing it. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh, it took a long time in coming because although I wanted to write about peace, I had the feeling sort of, how dare I write about it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's too big.
Uh-huh.
It's something that's beyond me. And yet it was also my children who helped me write it, because how dare I not write about it?
Mhm.
And how do we change anything if we don't take that small step? So that's why it's a small poem. It's just my smallest step.
Yes. Well, I know I wrote down when you were talking about introducing it, when you look for peace, you find it.
Yes.
When you look for peace, you find it. So that's very pertinent, it seems to us. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next poet is Willis Neighbor. Willa is a poet, essayist, visual artist, curator, and psychotherapist in private practice. She has offered 5 poetry collections, including In the Margins of the World, winner of the 2002 Oregon Book Award, Box Poems, Storytelling in Cambodia, which was published by Calyx, and Rendering the Garment. Letterpress chapbook, The Books of Esther, was produced in conjunction with her interdisciplinary exhibit at the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education. The Naked Room, a new poetry collection, is forthcoming from Broadstone Books later in the year. And I think he may have been just on a residency of some kind. So would you join me in welcoming our next poet, Willis Neighbor?
Thank you. Great to be part of this. And I just wanted to start with a question. I mean, for me to hear the translations and to feel the music is just amazing. But I also love reading the text. So I wonder if it's at all possible for us to get a copy of our poems, because that would mean so much to me to actually have a copy of the translation. So I wonder if that's possible, and I'm imagining the rest of us would like that as well. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I have the documents translated, so I will send them to Tom and then he can forward it.
Yes, that would be so wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
So I'm going to start a little bit about my poem, Italian Plums, and about this event, which I had the pleasure of being part of when it was at PSU a number of years ago. And I got to meet a number of folks in person and heard their poems in Arabic, and we read them in English. It was very wonderful. On March 5th, 2007, which is why we're holding this event today. I don't know why I didn't realize that, but that's why it's today. A car bomb or suicide bomb exploded and killed 26 people on Mudanami Street, named after the 10th century classical Iraqi poet, al-Mutanami. And as already been discussed, it was a center of book selling in Baghdad. I'd love to know what it's like now. Is that come back? Is it still a book selling center? I'd love to know that. I think about those 26 people who lost their lives and how the lives of their families and friends were changed forever. I think about their personal griefs and the personal griefs of individuals in Ukraine right now. This is a poem for my friend Sarah Lance, who died of brain cancer, coincidentally, also in 2007. Italian Plums for Sarah Lance, October 28th, 1958, September 10th, 2007. Italian Plums. We climb up lichen encrusted limbs to pluck purple black fruit, protected with white power that hides their sheen. We are inundated with plums, burdened by bounty. Why do we merit this small happiness? Plums boiling down in the big stainless steel pot, mason jars brimming with jam, brown paper bags bulging with enough for everyone. If only this plethora of plums could bring you back, but their days are even shorter than yours. They have burst their skins and are staining pavement. You were alive, but are no longer, and will not savor the juice of even one small plum.
Wow. And now in
Arabic?
عندك يا هشا
ايه عندي راح اقراها. اوكي. البرقوق الإيطالي، نتسلق الأطراف المعطاة بالجزاز لقطف الفاكهة ذات اللون الأرجواني والأسود، نحمي بمسحوق أبيض التي تخفي لمعانها، يغمرها البرقوق مثقلين بالمكافأة. لماذا نحن نستحق هذه السعادة الصغيرة؟ يغلي البرقوق في قدر كبير من الفولاذ المقاوم للصدأ، برطمانات ميسون ممتلئة بالمربى، أكياس الورق البني المنتفخة بما يكفي للجميع. إن كان هذا الكم الهائل من البرقوق فقط يمكن أن يعيدك، لكن أيامهم أقصر من أيامك. لقد فجروا جلودهم ولطخوا الرصيف. كنت على قيد الحياة ولكنك لم تعد، ولن تتذوق حتى عصير حبة برقوق صغيرة. Done.
Shukran. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for the poem and for the reading it in Arabic. So you've already said something about it, Willa. Is there anything more you want to share about writing this poem and the connection of plums and your friend? And
Well, I guess the two things to share. One is that sadly, her book was published. She was also a poet and she was published by Calyx Books. She saw her pre-publication copy, but not her final copy. And myself and Margarita Donnelly, who's also no longer with us, who was the chief editor at Calyx, we gave readings on her behalf. So I think, we have the book, and as we know, that's for us poets, it's a form of immortality.
Mhm.
And the other thing is that I no longer live in the house that had this amazing plum trees. And so that is not there for me to be on. My husband was really the one on the big ladders trying to get down those plums. And I just haven't wanted to see if the trees are there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That loss.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that addition. Oh,
And to answer Willa's question about how's Mutanabi Street now, I just put on the chat a link. Unfortunately, it's of course in Arabic, but you can see the photos will speak for how's Al-Mutanabi Street is looking like and what are the Iraqis are celebrating by the end of December 2021, just 3 months ago.
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Our next poet is Emmett Wheatfall. And Emmett lives in Portland, where he writes, records, publishes, and performs poetry. Fernwood Press, an imprint of Barclay Press, has published 2 books of Emmett's poetry. His collection, titled As Clean as a Bone, was published in May 2018 through Fernwood Press. As Clean as a Bone was a 2019 Eric Hoffer Award-winning finalist, as well as a Da Vinci Award finalist. Our Scarlet Glue Wounds is his latest collection and was published in November 2019. So let's welcome our next reader, our next poet, Emmett Wheatfall. Emmett.
Just the sound of hearing our next poet sounds so sweet. It's just great to be able to be a part of the Al-Mutanabi poetry reading. I've participated in a number of years, and just be able to do it again. Thank you, Tom. And I'm just excited. I get to see so many poets that I admire, some from a distance and others up close, but it's just great to be with you today. Let me give you some pretext for the poem that I've chosen to read today, pretext, because you're not able to actually look at the text. So if I can give you some verbal pretext, if you ever look at the actual text itself, it will amplify itself. As you're listening to this poem, I'd like you to listen for thematic things of value and worth, the pursuit of discovery. That's the genesis, the pretext in the poem. The poem is titled Inspired by W.H. Auden. Inspired by W.H. Auden. And the poem reads as follows. I set about to deconstruct the poem with aspiration it would be worth a large coin. The paper written on was not worth a dime. Feverishly writing cost me a day's work time. To my dismay, the Mont Blanc ink ran dry. And for the persona in my poem, I had to cry. Recalling the somber nature of her wake, that abiding poetic, I had to state, deconstruction took its place. Once written, my desire was for me to be smitten. Searched I the poem's hidden inner meaning, those qualities found in life worth redeeming. What came to light was her lovely blue bonnet, that hidden sentiment buried in the precious sonnet. Unfortunately, the poem never made any money. I moved on to writing something sage and funny. Oh my goodness.
Thanks, Emmett.
Mm.
And now in Arabic.
Okay, I'll read that. Thank you, Ahmed, definitely. القصيدة مستوحاة من كاتب W.H. Auden. أنا قررت تفكيك القصيدة. مع الطموح ستكون تستحق قطعة عملة كبيرة. الورقة المكتوبة عليها لم تكن تستحق 10 سنتات. الكتابة المحمومة تكلفني وقت عمل اليوم كامل. فزعت إذ كاد حبر مولان أن يجف. وللشخصانية في قصيدتي اضطررت إلى البكاء إذا استذكرت الطبيعة الحزينة التي أيقظها اضطراري للالتزام بالشاعرية. التفكيك أخذ مكانه عندما تمت كتابته. كانت رغبتي بالنسبة لي أن أكون مغرم. بحثت أنا في المعنى الداخلي المخفي في القصيدة. هذه الصفات الموجودة في الحياة تستحق استرداد. ما جاء إلى الضوء كان طاقيتها الزرقاء الجميلة. هذه المشاعر المخفية المدفونة في القصيدة الثمينة. لسوء الحظ لم تقدم القصيدة أي أموال، فانتقلت إلى كتابة شيء حكيم ومضحك. أمت وتفضل.
Oh, very kind.
Thank you, Bahar.
Yeah.
You want to share anything more, Emmett, about the connection with W.H. Auden?
I would, because
Writing the poem?
I would imagine people would say, why would you choose W.H. Auden for this? How does Auden relate to this? And there's a backstory. I was introduced to the poet W.H. Auden by Robert Lashley, a poet residing in Bellingham, Washington. Still is. He's a phenomenal poet. W.H. Auden was an early to late 1900 British American. He was British and immigrated to American poet. Auden's poetry was noted for its stylistic and technical achievements, its engagement with politics, morals, love, and religion, and its variety in tone, form, and content. One day at a poetry event, I observed Robert Lashley carrying around, as if a student, a volume of W.H. Auden's work. He had it on his side. It was like a thick anthology or a volume. While leaving the venue, I heard Robert Lashley say, quote, "It's time for me to go in the gym." And what I understood him to mean was he was carrying that around because he was studying the poetics of W.H. Auden. I was compelled to introduce myself to Auden. And as a result of looking at Auden's work, this poem has slant rhyme, perfect rhyme, in rhymes. It's in 4 quatrains for 16 lines. So the form and the stuff was put together. But the story is I was inspired by another poet who walked around with a huge volume of Auden that led me to Auden. So that's the story. It's the background.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much. So these are our English speaking readers. And Bahar, are there poems that you want to read?
هادي actually
ها
صورتك ماكو.
صورتي رحت على الرسائل. اوكي.
Okay, so Hadi actually has a poem to read. تتفضل أبو حسن.
دقيقة اوقف خلد تاهت عليه السالفة.
Yeah, just.
هسه تسمعون صوتي؟
احنا نسمع صوتك بس فيديو ماكو.
فيديو ماكو.
Okay, Hadi lost the video. And
هسه
here's Hadi.
There you go.
Hey.
just some verses for Iraqi poet, and he is talking about the loyalty and how he is disappointed from the people who was considered them as faithful friends or loyal friends. So he said in English, "Don't complain your wound. The wound only hurt the one who has the pain. Your complaint to people is fruitless and may increase your pain. If you complain your pain to those who is good in time or good time, your eyes boiling and they were like idle, no feeling. And if you complain to one to make him happy, this add wound to your wound, called regret. Did Senpai ever liberate a homeland? I made one day my chest or my body as a bridge to let my friends cross to the safe side, but they denied as soon as they crossed. I was loyal, but they were not. But these things did not break me. My wound is healed by using fire. That's all. Thank you. If you need Arabic, I can read it. لا تشكل الناس جرحا أنت صاحبه، لا يؤلم الجرح إلا من به ألم، فإن شكوت لمن طاب الزمان له عيناك تغلي ومن تشكو له صنم، وإن شكوت لمن شكواك تسعده أضفت جرحا لجرحك اسمه الندم، كم صرت جسرا لمن أحببته فمشى على ضلوعي وكم زلت به القدم. That's all. Thank you. دكتور.
Thank you, Hadi. شكرا جزيلا. The poet's name is Karim al-Iraqi.
كريم العراقي. Yes.
Ah. Do you have Bahar? Thank you very much for reading the poem in English and Arabic. Do you have any more poems?
For the Arabic
If you would like to
poems,
read?
or-
Hmm?
that's all what we have, you know.
Okay,
It expresses the disappointment of people.
well, let me ask then for our JC and Bev, if you have any questions, let's start there. Because we're having a question and answer period. If anyone has any questions that they want. So just asking if Bev or JC, if you had anything that you wanted to ask anyone. No?
No, I've enjoyed this very much. I look forward to listening to this, to the poet readings every year. It's just wonderful. It seems like they get richer and richer each year. Thank you very much for sharing and also for translating it into Arabic. It's a beautiful language.
Yes, it is.
The only thing I'd add, having cut myself off from Zoom, and now I'm back on, is to thank everyone for the readings. What I find interesting to me is that I do not speak Arabic, but there is a rhythm in the English that the Arabic translations seem to capture. And I listened for that, and I'm just surprised by that. I speak English and French, and you know, there's no way that that's easy to do. So I'm very delighted. And the thing I sent to you, Tom, is that I'm sitting in the snow in Prince Edward County, which is on Lake Ontario in Canada. So I'm definitely the odd poet out, but this has been a lovely afternoon. Thank you very, very much. I much appreciate it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And this does show you, we do spend a lot of time in front of Zoom, but this shows you one of the benefits, that you're able to connect with us and we're able to connect with you. And even though you're on Lake Ontario, and we're able to do that through Zoom. So thank you for logging in and connecting. Bahar, anything more you want to share about Al-Mutanabi Street starts here, about situation in Iraq, future plans?
Future plans regarding whom exactly? So,
Oh,
yeah. No, so you see, I explained when we started the political situation, and then on the chat, I put that link. I hope it's opening to see what are the people are also doing. Life is going on in Iraq, against all the, let's say, everything that's trying to block life, real life there, cultural life. So people by the end of the day will win. People will win. So that's what we are hoping for. And again, still waiting for something also to happen, so we get back to our full capacity as a community.
yes.
You know, I'd like to say that I hope that as many poets as possible are writing about the conflict in Ukraine. And the only reason why I say that, and in every major problem in history, from the time that poetry began, we know that there were the politicians that spoke up. We know that there were the religious leaders of the day who spoke up, but we tend to forget the role that the poets played in it. I was reading and I came across Alexander Pushkin, who was a biracial African poet in Russia. And where I'm going with this is, I think we're living in a time where people are not listening to political leaders and religious leaders. And I have a saying that that poets are the secular prophets in our world today. We are the ones that can speak, and then people will give us an ear. So I'm trying to fan more poets to write about conflicts around the world. Maybe our voice will be heard in that peace that Annie Lightheart is working through and her children are learning about becomes a reality. So thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have a question for anyone?
I just want to respond to Emmett that I agree with that. And but I also think that poets have always done that and will continue to be the voice of speaking what people need to hear. Just the other night, I listened to, so if anyone wants a link, just tell me that basically it was voices responding to Ukraine, including Carolyn Forche and Ilya Kaminsky, but there were also Ukrainian poets reading their poems and having them translated and vice versa, and all talking about resilience and resistance. So I think that this will always continue to happen happily, and voices of poets will always be heard.
May it be so.
Let it be so.
Yeah.
Well, this is a very rich day. So, and I experience it that way, and I'd love to hear the Arabic. So thank you for the translations. Thank you to the featured readers for being here and being part of this. So we've talked a little bit about next year. So we'll see what we want to do and how we want to do it for 2023. It's certainly worth doing. So with that,
Hopefully
anything
live.
final with the good of the order? Anybody have anything final? I'm going to stop the recording then.
Words of appreciation to all of you again.
Thank you.